What's up, everybody? It's me, San Martin, and I am definitely on the scene, and I got something to talk about, and I want you guys to hear all about it. But first, we got to get it started, and this is how we do it, like this. It's the bow tie. I'm telling you, I always get excited with the bow tie, guys. So, okay, so a lot of things that I love to do is be kind of like getting the community well aware of what's happening in our community. And if you guys don't know, we do cover the 863, which is, the Yavapai County area code. And it doesn't stop within our borders of Prescott, Arizona, or Prescott Valley, or Chino Valley. It actually goes far and beyond those locations. And it just so happens that we were contacted to go ahead and talk about something that is kind of very like sentimental to the community of Kirkland. And the reason why I decided to go ahead and make it happen is because my good old buddy, Brian Hampton, just said, "Hey, Martin, I need you to hear something." And I'm like, you know what, man, I'll hear you, because when you talk about Prescott, when you talk about Prescott Valley, or even the area in general, we have a lot of friends, we have a lot of family, and we obviously have a lot of history. And one of the things that we want to talk about today is this thing called no man camps. But in this segment, we're going to say, hey, no band camps for Kirkland, Arizona. So I want to introduce you guys. Well, I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but I want you guys to hear this, and I want you to listen, because it does affect us in a way that you might not think. But let's go ahead and talk about it. Without further ado, tell everybody who you are and what makes you famous
today. My name is Renee Howes, and I'm here today to talk to Martine and the audience about what's going on in Kirkland and the concerns that our citizens of both Kirkland, Skull Valley, and the surrounding area have.
My name is Doug Hulse. I'm here to talk about how inappropriate I believe this proposed development is of transient workers in Kirkland, and it's not responsible development. We firmly believe there's a place for this. We just do not believe it's in our community.
Okay, so in most cases, I mean, when it came to me, I had no clue what the heck was going on and what was being said. And I was just like, what is this talking about? So I had to do a little research in regards to what these man camps are all about. Can you guys describe a little bit about what this development looks like?
We're calling it a man camp. There's other names for it. It's basically transient worker housing. And this is something that's been done in the Williston Basin in North Dakota, and also in the Permian Basin in West Texas. So there's a lot of history about what these are. And typically they're small. In this case, this developer, Ben Snyder, is talking about bringing in 400 square foot, basically prefab boxables. And what these boxables are is basically what you would consider an accessory unit. They're not homes, but they are then planned to put about 600 minimum of these on 100 acres. That's basically in downtown Kirkland. If you want to call it our downtown, it's at the Three Corners. And so he also is going to plan to do 200 RV spots. So what Mr. Snyder has acknowledged is at some point in time, this could house up to 2,800 transient workers that will be specifically brought to the area by the Freeport McMoran mine contractor during the mine expansion. And the important thing to understand is that no one is against the mine. We think the mine is a great community member. We just simply feel that this is an inappropriate location due to the number of people it will be bringing in and all of the associated issues, which we can talk about later. But it's just really important to acknowledge this is a 100-acre tract. It's 1,400 feet from our school, and they're talking about bringing 2,800 people in that will be vetted, quote unquote, by the contractor. But they'll be coming, they'll be going, and then we'll talk about all the different issues that that's going to bring. So if Doug has more to add to the specifics of what Mr. Snyder is planning for our community.
Let me first say that I just put up a video. It's not exactly what the construction is. I haven't seen any of the blueprints or anything, but I ended up doing a little bit of back research in regards to man camps constructions. This is the one that I talked to you guys about. It shows a time lapse of how many of these things were put together in a short 60 days, which was 2 months, obviously, guys. So as you want to go ahead, Doug, you keep on going. Sorry about the interruption. I just want to let you guys know this is not the actual what they're building, because I don't know what they're building, but this is what I typed in YouTube man camp construction. So go ahead, Doug.
I think he kind of touched on the boxable, though. Mr. Snyder presented at the Skull Valley community meeting. I think it was Thursday, July 26th, about a week and a half ago. And he showed some pictures, and he said that is not the actual units either, but it was similar to some of the pictures you showed here.
Mhm.
You know, they're 400 square foot units. There's a downstairs unit and an upstairs unit. And, you know, my understanding would there be 2 guys in each of those units. These workers would come in to help the expansion of the mine. And again, we need the mine. We want their expansion. We just don't feel that this is appropriate in our area. This is a large mass of people in an area that's zoned for 2-acre housing.
Okay, so in regards to this, you know, I scoured through the press release that you guys have put together, and one of them was talking about how they have a vetting process about who could live there, who could actually be a part of there. You tap in a little bit about that, because a lot of people be like, well, if they vet these people, what happens after that? I mean, even in the community, I mean, from what, you know, obviously, let's talk about some of the cons of one of these structures or these communities put together.
So with 2,800 people, the vetting process that they would normally go through by the contractor that will be the general contractor on this expansion is, you know, they would, you know, drug test, background checks. But you're talking about 2,800 people. You're not talking about 100 people. And as in the oil field, same thing, those people are all vetted. But nonetheless, the number of people that get by the process for whatever reason, you know, I mean, I think it's pretty apparent that the numbers show that when these man camps come in, there's increased violence, there's potential for drugs, sexual assault, violence against women, that sort of thing. When you have that number of people concentrated in one area, and that's not to say that, you know, it's 2,800 parolees. It's just simply saying when you have 2,800 people in one place, and particularly if you're going to concentrate them on 100 acres, it's really just not going to be manageable in terms of whatever these people come with for concerns and baggage and all that. It's going to become our community's problem. And it's important to recognize that Skull Valley is also very concerned about this, as are the other towns surrounding us, because of the widespread influence of 2,800 people coming in to our community. The population of Kirkland is currently about 1,637, about 740 in Skull Valley. And now we're going to have 2,800 people coming in that are not invested in our community. They're not going to be residents. They're not going to be paying property taxes. So we can talk some more about, in addition to what they'll be bringing, what it'll be costing us as well.
Well,
You know,
I think that there's an actual long list of what potential issues come with an additional 2,800 people in one location. But go ahead. We'll
yeah,
tap
I
on
think
that in a
all of
second.
Yavapai County needs to think about this. So this is a big deal, you know. Maybe one of the biggest decisions, if this goes to the supervisors, that they're going to make. I mean, this is a unique setup. You know, only place I can think of that many men, primarily men, and that's the way it was presented to us at the Scottsdale meeting. Or I mean, the Scottsdale. I go to Scottsdale a lot. The community council, community meeting in Skull Valley. This is primarily male transient men.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of issues, and the only 2 places in the world that I know of housing of men like that is prison and the Army. Both have established structures and disciplines. And now you're talking about building this in a county, not even in an incorporated community. I mean, who who can manage this? Who's going to manage this? And that's where our group is really impressing upon them. This needs to be in Baghdad, where the mine does a great job of presenting it and maintaining a community, or on mine property where they have a vested interest in controlling this, because somebody's going to have to manage this. It's going to take a lot of management.
Yeah, and you think about a couple of the things that happen. Once again, I did a little research prior to you guys coming in, and I asked the question, to myself, like, what happens if they do vet these people and they do have an issue within the community and they do get kicked out? Where do they go after that? Do they go back home, or do they go back into the streets of our area? And the presented problem is that it kind of comes down to like the rehabs. And unfortunately, I'm not trying to bash on the rehabs or put anybody down on the rehabs, but the question was like, when the person that was in rehab relapsed and they got kicked out of their house or whatever, they were left on the streets of Prescott. And that became an issue because not only were they relapsing, but they were also dying in the streets because of overdosing and having and exhausting our police force or ambulance force by them having to keep on trying to keep these people alive because they were going back into the system or the world system. So let's talk a little bit about
that brings up a point too.
The infrastructure is going to be a big point.
But the Supervisor Oberg in the community meeting in Skull Valley prior to the presentation of the developer, one of the discussions was how Yavapai County is struggling to keep enough deputies on the force already to maintain the county. And now you have this into the picture, and people, they're transients. They are not living here. They're not residents. They're not going to pay taxes. This is a huge management issue.
Yep. And I mean, in most cases, you definitely got to think about it. I mean, if you blink, you will miss Kirkland. But now if you think about it and you add another additional 2,800 people, like, I mean, the infrastructure alone is not going to be able to keep up with it. I mean, you talk about the sewage, the waste, the water, the driving, the food. I mean, like, let's just face it, like all that needs to be constructed into that community in order for them to be able to live there. So what is the proposed, I mean, everything has to have a solution. Everybody has to work with each other because the mine is there. It happens to be one of the world's biggest mines. And it's like, what do we do? How do you guys can't stop the process, but you could go ahead and say, hey, wait, let's figure this out. What are your guys' thoughts and opinions on how you could actually make it work?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to recognize that we're in Yavapai County, and that particular piece of land is zoned for 2 acres. So that means what would be appropriate there would be the existing zoning. So that would be 1 house per 2 acres. Of the 100 acres, a lot of it is in the floodplain. So let's say, there's between 80 and 60 usable acres there. By the time you deduct for roads and that sort of thing, you may be able to get 40 to 50 homes in there. And so I don't think the issue is if the mine says we're going to do 2 acre lots, 1,200 square foot minimum, stick-built homes with deed restrictions that will be residents, these will actually be sold to those people versus building a rental community. I don't think that would be as big of a concern, because on 2 acres, then those people would be able to have on-site septic. They would be able to have their own well. What they're talking about is basically they're going to have to build a public water system. That public water system will be only for the benefit of that transient worker population. That's not going to benefit 1,600 residents in Kirkland because we're a large land mass. We're very spread out. So that it's not like they're going to bring something to the community that we're all going to benefit from. Same thing with the wastewater. They will have to put in a wastewater treatment facility, and then they'll have to get a discharge permit, whether they choose to put it into Kirkland Creek, which is essentially ephemeral. So now you're talking about, if it's about 260,000 gallons a day of effluent, treated effluent, but now going in Kirkland Creek, that's going to change the whole dynamic of Kirkland Creek. So those are big concerns to people. The water availability, without long-term study with observation wells saying if we need to pump 260,000 gallons a day out of the aquifer, what does that do to our ranchers' wells? What does that do to our local residents' wells? We had a well driller, Mr. Balo, who's been in this area for I think he said like 70 years drilling wells. And he said that he stood up at the community meeting and he expressed his concern. He said, look, we already have wells that are going dry. We already have this issue. People are having to spend more money on an existing well to further develop it because we are having some water issues. We had ranchers that said, look, some of my springs are no longer producing. Some of my windmills are no longer able to reach the aquifer. And that is the problem. That's
one of many problems.
One of many problems. But it is 2-acre zoning. That's appropriate for that location. Something like this would require planned unit development approval, which would then go through development services. Then the board of supervisors would get to vote on it. And our goal is to get ahead of this. The developer's not made any applications at this point in time. We feel it's important to get it out there to the community before he gets so far along in the process that you can't get people to stop and look at other alternatives. And with the mine recently having purchased 17,000 acres from State Land Department, it's hard to believe that there's not an appropriate location that is closer to the mine, that would be more rural, that would be appropriate, that they could put the infrastructure in to provide. We don't have infrastructure in Kirkland. We're not providing them with water. We're not providing them with sewer. I think the only thing that we have is we have an upgraded electric line that was recently done for the Kirkland mine, which is another distinction. It's important to understand this is not about the Kirkland mine. This is not housing for the Kirkland mine. This is housing for the Baghdad mine.
All right, just to go ahead and tap into a couple of the comments that are on here. They want to know, what does quote unquote transient worker mean?
Transient worker means that the general contractor that's been hired for the mine expansion will be bringing skilled workers in, skilled and non-skilled workers from different areas of the country. This will be welders, it'll be pipe fitters, it'll be people running excavation machines. And these transient workers, this is what they do. A lot of these people probably are going to come from the Permian Basin and the Williston Basin, where they've worked on pipelines. They'll come here, they'll work for a period of time. They may work, depending upon what their schedule is, they may work for 3 weeks and go home for a week and come back. They may stay for a period of time. They're saying right now that the mine expansion is supposed to be completed by the end of, is it 2024 or
Not right.
no, something, like they're saying in the next
quickly.
2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
So this is an impact for 2 to 3 years. And it's not to say that these people, they're paid very well. So it's not to say that these are, low income people. Just when you have 2,800 people, and then there's about a 35% turnover, based on what I've been able to get from other people that have been involved in man camps. So 35% of those people are either going to need to move back home, or they're going to move out, or they're not going to keep their jobs. So in addition to the 2,800, you're going to have 35% of them going in and out.
Yep. And there's another question here. It says, what isn't the goal to help and let people work? That's a great and valid question.
Absolutely.
I think that they're not trying to stop the ability for workers to work. It's more or less the building and the construction of this said man cap, which is not good for the infrastructure. And as of right now, it would do a very major impact on the environment in that location, which we already know how that works. When you start populating an area, things start changing. Here in Prescott, Arizona, being born and raised here, you acknowledge a lot of things, and a lot of things right now are changing, and things are just moving to a direction of, like, when you have more people there, it shows. It actually just starts showing. Like the ground is like, oh my God, I'm tired of you walking on me. You can actually feel Mother Nature just saying, hey, I'm sorry, this is not good. Here's another one. GMA says, are they going to contribute to the taxes, the roads, the plumbing, the water management, the food, the clothing, the housing, etc.? So this is the question that needs to be answered, but at the same time, there has to be a solution. So let's talk a little bit about how Baghdad could obviously potentially hold this facility there. Why won't they? And how come they haven't planned this out when they planned out that huge development that's going on with it?
they haven't given us a real credible reason. I don't feel anyway that, they say, well, we don't have the right piece of land. We don't have the right, they haven't elaborated on what the right is. Well, there's a wash in the way, or there's, we got to bring power for 5 miles. This is a company that I think I looked at their Q1 results last year, and they made $1.5 billion, $1.04 per share for the shareholders, and it's a company doing really, really well at this time. So I don't know that's a real argument. I'm afraid that they want to put it somewhere else because they protect Baghdad. It's a nice town when you go there. They do a great job of managing that town. Our group is a group of concerned citizens. Renee and I are here to represent them and say, hey, you know what, there's an appropriate place for this. Again, we're not trying to stop the mine. We want this expansion to happen. They have materials that this world needs now, and we need that to happen. But there's an appropriate place for it. And in my mind, where the mine is vested in it, they're going to take care of it, is in Baghdad or somewhere very near that's very rural. I have real concerns for any Yavapai County community to have to house this group, and one thing that we didn't elaborate on much is what happens to these when the project's done, and I think, if we got a moment, Martine, Renee can talk a little bit because she talked to the economic
development director
in Pecos County, Texas. Is that where it was?
Mm-hmm.
But tell us what he said about what's happening. This is from the economic development director of Pecos County. He told us what was happening. Tell him what he told you, Renee.
So in Pecos, what happened is before they really even knew what hit them as part of the Permian Basin development, they ended up with 5-man camps inside of their city limits. And he said, that then once they were able to see what was really happening, they were able to then to adopt new ordinances to no longer allow them to be inside the city limits. But one of the questions has been brought up, and it was mentioned even at the community meeting. Well, what happens at the end of this, at the end of 4 or 5 years? What, are these removed? Are they left there? Do they become affordable housing? Do they become migrant? What happens? And the developer didn't have a good answer for that. And I'm sure he's financially motivated, so he knows exactly what's going to happen. He just maybe is choosing not to share it. But in the case of Pecos County, inside the city of Pecos, what happened was literally a pipeline company that had this 500-man camp inside the city limits. They then sold it to the U.S. government, and the United States government is now putting migrants, and literally they bused 1,000 migrant children in the middle of the night to this facility. They had 1,000 students in their school. They now have to figure out how 2,000 students can be accommodated. And I asked him, I said, well, who cares for these children? Well, the U.S. government does. We do. And he said, we don't have the services. We don't have the facilities. We don't even have the power really to help manage this. So that's a concern. And people have said, well, what if this eventually became affordable housing? Well, we're 35 minutes from town. We don't have any services that would be logical that you would have high density, low income housing. Anywhere that low income housing is built, as it's always in infill areas. And that's one of the things we're having a very hard time understanding is why Kirkland, we're not an infill area. We don't have services. We have a post office, we have a bar, and we have a school.
Yeah, Susan Cordesh was like, the area has no gas stations, no grocery store, and no medical facility. Really should be closer to Baghdad. Ridiculous commute for the workers. And that's the bottom line, and that's the freaking, that is the truth. Like, why would you put it so far away? If we're not mistaken, it's what, 30, 45 minutes away from Kirkland?
It's 50 minutes
50
away.
minutes
38 miles.
Yeah, 38 miles, 50
and,
minutes.
And you could just understand the impact that's going to do not only on the roads but also for our environment. I mean, it is what it is. No matter what, whenever you start adding that many people to an existing place, that you have to think about what it does. And this is going to impact the community for years on out,
Years.
no matter
Okay.
what
No
it
matter
happens
what.
in the matter
Right.
of 3 years that they utilize this little facility.
Not just this community, but there's a lot of effects in Yavapai County.
Mhm.
I think everybody really needs to think about this and get involved.
Oh
you know?
yeah, I think
Yeah.
that we tapped on that on the conversation that you know what, it's not only going to affect you guys, but it will affect us because when they don't find work there or they get kicked out of their camp, you know they're going to spill into the next city next door, which you know is going to be Prescott, it's going to be Wickenburg. I think that's the only two like hugely capacitated places that they could possibly go to find work or find something to do. That could probably be, not saying that everybody's gonna be bad, but at the same time, you still got to go ahead and call it what it is. The unknown is definitely here. So hopefully you guys get more answers. What is the call to action? What can the community do to help you guys? I'm going to go ahead and also, just as you guys know, I'm putting up their email address. So if you guys have any concerns, any more questions, you guys could go to nomancampaign@gmail.com. Screenshot this right now, and you guys can go ahead and make that happen. But tell everybody what you guys are wanting the community to do for you.
Anybody in Yavapai County, we invite them to Kirkland. It's not too hard to find, but right across from the bar at the railroad crossing on Saturday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., we're going to have a petition signing. And our petition simply says, we, the undersigned, are opposed to any transient worker housing for the Freeport-McMoran mine to be placed in Kirkland to accommodate the mine's expansion workforce. In order to protect our rural area, lifestyle, and culture, we believe the existing zoning is appropriate, which is a 2-acre minimum. Any high-density housing proposed for the area is opposed. And we're going to start a petition, Martine, to try to get as many people to sign as possible and let the supervisors, the mine, know that, hey, we don't feel this is appropriate for our area. We also have some documents. If you email us at nomancampaign@gmail, we've got some documents that you can send us. We have the email addresses for Ben Snyder of the Pronghorn Group, the PR of Freeport-McMoran Mine, and then also our supervisors, and anybody that can email those supervisors or the mine or the developer and let them know, hey, this is not the appropriate location for it. We would very much appreciate your help because there's so much, as Martine in this discussion has brought out, that goes along with this. Can Yavapai County really manage this type of situation? It's something.
I think we're on that level right now, understanding that growth is you can't stop it, but you can really honestly maintain it. And I think that Prescott has that thing going for them right now. Prescott Valley definitely has that going for them. Chino Valley is like, our roadways need help, and nobody wants to really say, hey, let's up our taxes in order for us to do that. So, I mean, this is going to be an issue no matter what's going to happen. But if you guys go ahead and get us,
we understand growth, but
yeah,
this is a special circumstance.
Yeah,
this is not typical growth. This is a big issue in a very unique situation.
I ended up putting Harry Oberg's telephone number on there and also his email. Give him a call to see that you guys are concerned about this whole scenario. We also put up everybody else's number that you guys could call if you choose to go ahead and help out with this campaign. And we understand that we need to keep our voices heard, and that's kind of the reason why I have this platform. And as you guys all know, that sometimes anything that's said on here is not truly our earnings. So as you see on the bottom, it says our view, thought, and opinions expressed in this blog cast belongs solely to the author and not the Prescott Times Media LLC. So with that being said, I really do appreciate you guys for tuning in and also reading and listening along with us. If you guys have anything that you guys want to go ahead and put out, well, we could go ahead and do it at theprescotttimes.com, and you guys all know how to get there just like that. Oh, you can't touch it, but you guys could read it and then type it into your search engines and go check out all the news releases that are coming out here locally in our community and all of Yavapai County. And guess what? We got Kirkland now. So guys, if you guys want to do anything to help out, get a hold of them. And you guys could do that by emailing them at nocampaign@gmail.com or go out there this Saturday to help write that. What is it? Petition.
To sign our petition.
10 to 1, right there at the Kirkland Railroad Crossing.
All right. And if anybody else wants to help volunteer to go ahead and make this a bigger effort, please let them know for sure.
Absolutely. We'd appreciate any help the community can give us in terms of resources. We've had all kinds of people provide their contacts if they know other supervisors, because it's important to remember we only have one supervisor that represents our interest for other supervisors. So it's important that everybody get with their supervisor as well. Thank you.
All right, guys. Well, with that being said, I'm out of here. I got things to do. You guys got things to do. And obviously, you guys don't have nothing to do besides watch us. With that being said, I'm out of here. We'll catch you guys later.
Thank you.